at Golden Grove intersection. Alzari Joseph leaves field briefly in decisive ODI against England, and internationally, European leaders urge Trump to support Ukraine and avoid trade war. Now for the details. The Privy Council has dismissed an appeal by Finance Minister Colm Imbert and the Cabinet, allowing Auditor General Jaiwanti Ramdas to proceed with her lawsuit challenging a government probe into her 2023 audit of public accounts. The five-member panel of law lords decided they did not need further submissions from the state's attorney, Douglas Mendez, and upheld the appeal court's decision. Ramdas initially resisted changes to the accounts after discovering a discrepancy of $2.6 billion in reported revenue. She later accepted the revised accounts under legal pressure but flagged issues in her report to Parliament. Her lawsuit contends the investigation led by former Judge David Harris infringes on her independent role as Auditor General. The matter now heads to the local High Court. An unidentified man was killed last night after being struck by a vehicle on the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway near the Golden Grove intersection. Around 9 p.m., the man reportedly walked into oncoming traffic on the eastbound lane and was hit by a car driven by a man from Arima. The initial impact proved fatal, and his body was subsequently struck by several other vehicles whose drivers couldn't stop in time. Police are seeking the public's help to identify the victim. Anyone with information is urged to contact the nearest police station. West Indies fast bowler Alzari Joseph unexpectedly walked off the field for an over during the third ODI against England at Kensington Oval, Barbados, leaving the team one man short in the fifth over. Joseph had just dismissed Jordan Cox after a lengthy on-field chat with Captain Shai Hope about field placements. After completing his over, Joseph exited the dressing room, prompting ODI coach Darren Sammy to intervene. The match continued with Matthew Ford and later Romario Shepherd taking over bowling duties until Joseph returned in the 11th over. The series remains tied 1-1. Internationally, European leaders meeting in Budapest urged Donald Trump following his re-election to avoid trade wars and maintain support for Ukraine. Trump's win introduces new uncertainty for Europe as leaders emphasize the importance of U.S. backing in Ukraine's conflict with Russia and in NATO's stability. European Council President Charles Michel calls for firmness in U.S. dealings with authoritarian regimes, while European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed EU unity as crucial. Leaders voiced concerns over potential tariffs on European exports, with Luxembourg's Prime Minister Luc Frieden seeking dialogue without sacrificing principles. Hungary's Viktor Orban, one of Trump's few European allies, reportedly celebrated Trump's return. However, with Germany's government just dissolved and a general election ahead, leaders also face internal challenges. The summit will focus on Ukraine, transatlantic ties, and economic security. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Magnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
An ethical question. If someone breaks the law, do you have the right then to commit an offense against that person? If someone is a criminal, do you or should you be able to break the law in dealing with that person? Now, let's take it a step further. If someone is accused of breaking the law, and it has not been proven in court, there has been no judgment, there hasn't even been a trial, then is it excusable to do anything that may be a breach of that person's rights that may break the law. This is one of the slippery slope questions when it comes to how we treat with our accused, our prisoners. This is also part of the discussion, but not completely linked, but it's parallel to how do you implement police being more aggressive, taking the gloves off, being stricter? But does that also mean harsher? But then there is also the illegal aspects of it. Should we turn a blind eye if laws are broken and something happens to an accused? In fact, maybe people don't realize, but it seems as though some of our population has approved of something to that nature already. We all know the situation about the young girl, Hannah Mathura. Her remains were found, her parents were charged, eventually. And now her mother, not too long ago, passed away while in custody. An autopsy was given. Unfortunately, not long after came allegations that she was raped while in custody. Now, the fact of the matter is, such an accusation like that, I would not say we automatically should believe to be true and convict the prison service automatically. But I would say it needs to be investigated in most days. But today is not technically most days. Today is one of many days after two incidents happened where suspects, people who were not convicted, died in the custody of the prison service, and the autopsies for such, they've been disputed by second autopsies. Cause of death, two varying different claims in each case. One saying natural causes, the first one usually, and the other saying blunt force trauma. The second one, usually independent. I'm not saying the prison service is guilty. I am saying that history says they're capable. And it seems as though some citizens were happy to hear of her death. And her husband apparently is grieving and might soon follow. Now, the guilt or innocence of the two can be disputed. Unfortunately, for society, we will never have that trial for the mother at the very least. And to some extent, I find it distasteful that people will rejoice in her death. I get it, it's human nature. But there is a world where maybe she was innocent, maybe she was uninvolved, but still guilty. That's something that at the end of the day now, really and truly, to some extent, that's the family members to figure out how they want to remember their mother and if they want to be truthful to themselves. The father, well, as long as he survives, still has his day in court. But regardless of what we think of her, even if she was guilty, should we tolerate such behavior if the accusations of rape, there is evidence to suggest that it's true, or it can be proven to be true? This is a slippery slope, one that I don't like. And because of past behavior, the prison service has much to answer for. And I would hazard a guess that as much as we have issues with the TTPS and the Coast Guard, and maybe even the Defense Force, the prison service potentially has some of the worst examples of misconduct in recent history on public record. And I am even less inclined to give that service any benefit of the doubt in this matter. I'm not saying, like I said, that we should condemn them outright, but this needs to be investigated. The problem is, can we even trust the investigation? That remains to be seen, and that's assuming there will be one. A scenario, if it happened, the perpetrators figured no one would care about this woman. We already know that young men in society have raped elderly women. So let's not think that that's not possible. And prison officers involved don't have to be young, which opens up a whole set of different implications to that. The only thing that would be satisfactory in this case to me would be something that could prove what happened, whether innocent or guilty. I'm not here to condemn the prison service. That's why I don't want them to necessarily be considered guilty in the court of public opinion without evidence. What I want is the truth. So I want an investigation. It could clear prison officers or it could condemn them. That part doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the truth. And if this ugliness can be proven to be true, then consequences should happen. We have a duty of care, believe it or not, to criminals. The moment we start to pick and choose what rights we have to enforce and uphold, that's when we start down a slippery slope that will eventually, not may, will eventually lead to your own rights being circumvented, suppressed, withheld, and removed. That's how these things work. You do not leave any space for doubt in matters like this, unless you want to risk your own neck and the collective necks of the entire society. That's history of human beings. It's not about protecting the criminals. We don't protect them just to protect them. We protect them to protect us. And I don't know how else to explain it so that you would understand. Society is not schoolyard justice. It's not neighborhood justice. The bigger picture is complex and we don't always like it. But principles are only principles when you apply them across the board. If you selectively pick and choose when you do so, they're not principles, they are ideologies of convenience. That is a good way to start societal decline. Meanwhile, one more thing that I want to just mention, and it's something that the TTPS has brought up in the past. Road safety is not just traffic accidents between vehicles, it also is with regards to accidents of pedestrians. The problem is sometimes it's reckless driving, sometimes it's reckless pedestrians. Now, evidence would be good to sort it out. But recently, there was a man who was struck down by a motorist along the eastbound lane of the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway, near an intersection, Golden Grove. The driver said he didn't see the man. 20-year-old driver said he didn't see the man. Already, yes, we could be suspicious of that scenario. But depending on how close the man was to the highway, and I've seen people do this, and it makes me very uncomfortable. You're in the medium, or maybe you're on near the shoulder or what have you, on the shoulder. Now, at some point, a car could notice you, but the car has to continue on. And it's not necessarily safe for a car on the highway to slow down to 20 kilometers per hour to ensure that if this person trips and falls suddenly, I don't run him over. Which is why I don't like pedestrians. The one time it happened to me in recent memory, I was very uncomfortable and I slowed down and gave as wide of a berth as I could, because I knew that if it was a couple walking in the middle of the two lanes, They didn't have much room. If either of them tripped and fell, slipped on water, what have you, tripped on their own 2 feet and fell to the side, depending on as I approached them, there would be no time to react. Maybe that happened in this case. But one of the key points that the TTPS spoke about with regards to pedestrians is, let's just say you notice a pedestrian now that fell into the road, that decided to cross recklessly, that is delirious and walked into the road because they are not of sound mind. And you avoid the pedestrian and you might hit another driver. Even if you slow down and try to drive responsibly. Obviously, you will be pulling away from the pedestrian, or the drivers in the middle lane looking at a pedestrian on the other side of the lane next to them. Probably not. And then what compounds the issue is, it's the highway. Usually, unless it's not peak hours, there are cars, one behind the other. Unfortunately, the accident victim, I'll say accident victim for now, he was struck down and then subsequently was run over by following or oncoming vehicles that came up behind the initial car. How are you going to see something when the cars in front of you are basically going to block it? And if nobody avoids it, then there'll be a daisy chain of people not knowing what happened until it happens. Now, Arrive Alive is saying that the speed limit for main roads should be reviewed. This isn't just a main road. This is, I believe, a highway. It's an intersection. I don't know if the gentleman was approaching the highway and the pedestrian was crossing the main road on the intersection to the highway. That would seem unlikely because it's not like you could just go from a main road and speed onto a highway. I'm assuming right now it was on the highway itself. So I don't see what reviewing the speed limit will do in this case, because we have to determine whose fault it is and why. Because even if it was 60 kilometers per hour, this accident could have still happened. At 60 kilometers an hour, at 50 kilometers an hour, you have cars in line, close enough, they will run over. The first car will knock down, and maybe the pedestrian might survive the initial hit, but then being run over by the following subsequent cars, who knows? Pedestrians along highways not using the crosswalks or the crossovers, that's a recipe for disaster. And not too long ago, Ashraf Ali was on the show speaking about pedestrians crossing the highway in proximity to a flyover, to a crossover. Disregarding safety concerns. Something to be said about how we approach this topic. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get into some actual talking points here on WSND Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus, quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
This holiday season, bring the magic of Christmas home with WESN's Joy of Christmas. Relive timeless classics, from the laughter to the heartwarming moments that make the season unforgettable.
Hey, like the lamp, not the rat, like the lamp, not the rat!
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God!
Whoa!
Oh, but baby.
Experience the joy of WESN special productions, crafted to bring you new stories and cherished memories. This year, Let WESN bring the joy of Christmas to your home.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown!
Catch the spirit, catch the joy.
Anchors away. May the force be with you.
Only on WESN, your content capital.
Welcome back to Talking About on WESN. And before we proceed any further, let me remind you, those who know, today is Friday. And what does that mean? It's Fun Friday on the Face of Sports on WESN. And Andre Batiste, host of the Face of Sports, he is the Face of Sports. He has a special treat for all of you. The Prime Minister Stakes 2,000 meters. Watch and see which candidate / jockey will win this special race and perhaps indicate who will be the next Prime Minister of TNT. All in good fun on Fun Fridays on the Face of Sports with Andre Batiste, 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. Now, let's come back to me because it's time to start today's Daily Review. And of course, the main topic today, if you picked up some papers, you should be able to figure out what it is. The Auditor General. She won in her day in court at the Privy Council. The Privy Council has ruled against the government's argument and basically has cleared the way for the Auditor General to proceed to challenge the state-ordered probe of her approach with regards to auditing the 2023 public accounts. And a couple of things happened in this Privy Council hearing, trial, what have you, that I find very interesting. First of all, it seems as though the Privy Council only heard arguments from the state's lead attorney, Douglas Mendez, SC. They did not bother to hear from the Auditor General's attorneys before giving their ruling. And they gave their ruling. It's somewhat straightforward. They found the matter to be of great importance, so they stated the outcome of the appeal, and they will give, I believe, the written reasons and the full reasons afterwards. And the long and short is, and this is what came out from the Court of Appeal and why the Court of Appeal, I believe, ruled in favor of the Auditor General in the first place. The test for arguability is low. The board was not satisfied that it has been shown. Leave was granted on the pleaded grounds, and the question of arguability will be heard if the judicial review proceeds on the merits. Therefore, the Court of Appeal order will stand, and the board will state its reasons as soon as practical. Now, that's part one. They didn't bother to hear the lawyers from the Auditor General. Her case did not even need to be made before the law lords and law lady decided to rule against the state's position. But then it went further. It went further than that. And some interesting things came up with regards to the Privy Council's questioning Douglas Mendez SC. First of all, as is reported, I'm not sure if it was the first thing that came up, but one of the things Lady Sinclair repeatedly, apparently, questioned Mr. Mendez on the minister's conduct, Colin Burt, Minister of Finance. To what extent is the minister's conduct going to be investigated? She was singled out, meaning Jawanti Ramdas, but not him. Why do the terms of reference not include the minister? That would be even-handed, she also asked. Now, this is important, not to toot talking points own horn, but the good lady herself brought up the terms of reference. Brought up the fact that look at how the terms of reference is written, that it basically puts forward a conclusion. And there was also another part about it, which I took issue with from the very beginning. The minister and the government's position was that, look, the investigation of the Auditor General was not a disciplinary one. And the law lords basically did the obvious follow-up that I had from, I can't say from the beginning, but I believe almost from the beginning. But if she refuses to participate, there may be disciplinary action, question mark. How can you compel her to do something that is not a disciplinary action? Why should she participate? And then if you do something to force, to compel her to do so, then technically you're disciplining her. So how does that work? And Douglas Mendes went on to try to say, well, something important happened with the public accounts, and he wants to know what happened. And Lady Simler basically countered with, but they got her response. She is saying she was bullied and it is one-sided. Why do the terms of reference not include the minister? Coming back to that point. Coming back to that point. And this basically goes to the fact that I, again, have to bring into question, what was the minister thinking? Why did he think he had a leg to stand on with regards to what he presented? How he presented his arguments to the public? Who advised him that this was a wise course of action? And if it was the Attorney General, when will he stop acting as though he's in private practice giving advice to a client of a private practice? This is the Minister of Finance who has an issue with the Auditor General, and the Auditor General, believe it or not, Mr. Imbert, and Mr. Oh, I can't even remember the Attorney General's name right now. I'm so upset. The point is, she doesn't work for you. She never worked for you. You don't have oversight. So the minister wants to know what happened. Cool, but the minister needs to understand he could request to do so, to get to the bottom of this, not as a supervisor, not as a boss. He has no authority here. So again, Lady Simler said, but they got her response. This whole situation reeks to me of improper conduct. And again, it goes back to what the Privy Council asked. Who's going to investigate the minister? Not just for his conduct to the Auditor General, but how he did things with regards to not publishing the Auditor General's report when the law stated he had to. This is why it's not that I want the Privy Council because I think the CCJ is inept. But the Privy Council, the individuals, not the institution, the individuals have proven to be able to cut through the nonsense and get to the root of important, critical issues, which may be all the way up to constitutional issues. And I think, and to some extent, they probably were not as harsh as they could be. Now, I don't know if the opposition is going to effectively use this, but this is, to me, is a very, very, very big deal. I would have thought a lot of these questions were obvious, but the Privy Council is saying it. It's not just Sean Michael Small, who is just a host of a show. Okay, let's go a step better. It's not just Karen Shishera, who is a former Minister of Finance and has taught most of the lawyers, I believe, I would argue potentially, or a good chunk of them, that may be advising the government right now. Well, she definitely taught a lot of the lawyers who have their legal credentials who are sitting in Parliament. She wrote the books and is the authority of several legal subjects. When she brings up what to me seems like fairly straightforward questions and the implications of these straightforward questions that the Privy Council has now brought up, they're not pretty if you value a true, free, fair, and protected democracy. They're not. But what gets me even better in this situation is not just the fact that the government has behaved in a manner that I vehemently disagree with, but they did so in a way that I find incredibly foolish and incredibly stupid and incredibly arrogant in doing so. Reginald Amor, that's the AG's name. I don't understand what kind of legal advice he's leading off to give to the cabinet, or what SCs is he bringing in to advise cabinets and the various ministries. And on top of that, who told the government it was a good idea to take this case to the Privy Council? This is the second time I think I've said that statement within a month. Let's not forget, Reginald Amor said our local judges are good. Funny how he only said that when the Court of Appeal agreed with him and disagreed with the Privy Council. He doesn't go on a press conference and say that when the Court of Appeal and the Privy Council are aligned and they both are saying the government is wrong. All right, let's end that there. We have other topics, but I do have guests waiting, so let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to hit a topic that one of our callers, our viewers, is most passionate about, and we ourselves want to continue this conversation. Stay tuned to Talking About WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
And we're back here on Talking Point on WESN. And if you watch the show every day, you may catch one of our callers bringing up what would be his primary cause of concern throughout the nation, that is noise pollution. And then speaking to ASP Ashraf Ali, at times through the various holidays over the couple of years where he's been on the show, that has also come up. Firecrackers, the noise, not just the danger of the explosives, but the noise as well, and the inconvenience, but even the distress it can cause. Usually things like that, people tend to think, oh, well, pets will be fine. It's just one night, what have you. Although we're coming up to Christmas, it's not just going to be one night when you think about it, Christmas into New Year's. And then on top of that, on this very show, my colleague, Mr. Keaton Shaw, has brought up his own anecdotal case where noise pollution not only continued to inconvenience him, but the poor law enforcement response in that specific case alarmed and concerned him. And to continue this conversation, we have with us a representative from a group that is, I guess you could say, leading the charge on an issue that far too many of us take for granted, tolerate, and maybe just accept and excuse. I am joined by Tamara Cheta. She is the Public Relations Officer of Citizens Against Noise Pollution of TNT. Welcome to Talking Point, Tamara. Glad for you to join me.
Thank you so much for having me here, Mr. Small.
So, first off, your organization. I mean, there are many organizations that advocate various important things. Not everybody knows about it. So for the viewers at home, I know you've actually been on our network before, but for those who may not know, Citizens Against Noise Pollution, you know, how was it started? What was the incidents or the situation that maybe got your group, the members, the founders, to come together and say, let's create an organization to advocate for this issue? And exactly what is it that you'll advocate for? What are the specific areas that you'll focus on?
Okay, well, it was started actually by as a Facebook group by a woman called Josie Archie. I don't want to embarrass her and too much here, but I mean, she's such a strong woman, and it started with her being affected severely by noise from a bar. And she actually headhunted specific people that were vocal about noise. And she created this group, Citizens Against Noise Pollution. She has taken a step back, and we have now, we're now an unofficial NGO. And I'm not saying no, we've been in existence for about 7 years. Myself included about 5 years. So it is more than an NGO. It's a grassroots movement dedicated to reshaping the conversation around noise pollution and advocating for impactful policy changes. We were just founded by concerned residents. We provide a platform on Facebook where over 3,000 members connect. We share experiences and support each other in the fight against noise pollution, which is a pervasive issue that affects the health, well-being, and daily lives of people throughout the nation. Our objectives center around 3 main pillars, which are public awareness, public reform, and community support.
Now, noise pollution, like, if you could just list some of the things, because I think a lot of people, they might be annoyed by it, but they might not realize, listen, this is something that's widespread. and the effects of it. And you could maybe speak to that better than I can. I only know of a few examples. The effects of it can be more than just, oh, well, it's loud and I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
Sometimes loud and annoying is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, one of the reoccurring things that I think is more common than people think is noise from a bar, right? Or people might think, well, it's just me that's suffering from noise from a bar. But that seems to be apparently more common than it is. And then, of course, there's fireworks, as I mentioned before. There's music trucks that the TPS has brought up, whether it's carnival or advertising. There's FETs, which comes up around the carnival season as well. And then one thing that I thought of as well, car radios and maxis. Every now and then there's a driver that just has way too loud music. That's not always something that's, I guess you could say, it's not sustainable noise, but it adds to it. When you get, is there anything I'm missing, first of all, that could contribute to noise pollution?
Well, you basically said everything in a nutshell. What, and I'm glad you brought up the word annoyance, because what it is now and what we are getting as a community and as a group is that people are annoyed by us. They're annoyed that we are asking the questions. They're annoyed that we are coming to the police stations. They're annoyed that we are calling them. And now the narrative is they're trying to change the narrative and paint themselves as the victim. We do not want them to have fun. We do not want to encourage commerce because we are speaking out against, we completely want commerce to happen and feed our communities. And I'll tell you, discussing the effects of noise pollution is a very challenging thing, not just because of the facts, but because of the deep emotional toll it takes on those affected. Noise pollution is not just a disturbance, it is a violation of our personal peace and well-being. When people describe sleepless nights, anxiety, and strain on their families, it becomes incredibly difficult not to feel deeply moved. It is not just an environmental issue, it is a personal issue that affects our quality of life, our health, our basic happiness when we enter our homes. It makes it hard to stay detached from the issue, especially when you see and feel that lasting effect from the excessive noise that you have on real lives. It's an issue that resonates strongly with many of us because it's not heard, it is felt. So,
like the distress of individuals, to get into that, because I know one example, a friend of mine, he basically had to rent a hotel room as far away from the fireworks as possible. And this is not somebody who could just throw money around, right? Budgets for expenses month to month are tight. And yet they decided, for the sake of the one-year-old in the household who cannot deal with fireworks, because they have I think, noise cancelling headphones. But he was saying, look, the length of time that this situation would be for a one-year-old, that's just not practical, right? So they decided we're going to have to go to a hotel. And hotels, ironically, in Port of Spain and Trinidad, east-west corridor, right? We're not even talking by the beach. They're not that, and we're not talking about Hyatt or Hilton. We're talking about whatever you could get. They're not that cheap. They're more expensive than Tobago, a vacation destination. So that kind of money is being spent because I think it was for all years or a holiday where it was almost guaranteed to have a lot of fireworks. But then this situation from noise from a bar, like, to some extent, I think people need to understand, if a bar is that close to a community, commercial activity or not, there's a lot of negative things that could come out from too much noise, too much partying, too much drinking, if it's that close to a residential area. Would you say?
Of course. And when you say that, it brings it into tying what we are currently experiencing from our government. We just recently had to pay, and we are paying property tax. Why is this person getting up and have to leave their property after paying property tax, and you are insisting that we pay property tax, yet the commercial bar is not paying property tax? What are you doing to your people? right? We have to leave our homes, but I cannot enjoy my property, yet you are taxing me. I have no issues, our members have no issues paying property tax. I'll tell you that flat out. But we would like to enjoy our properties, please. Why should I have to leave my home because you cannot enforce a law?
Well, that is the big thing, right? Because from what I understand, there's a bit of a runaround. The AMA points to the police. It's their responsibility, call them. The police point to the AMA, no, it's their responsibility, call them. Meanwhile, I lament the fact that it seems as though leadership and governance does not come into play to then say, all right, we at the top will determine whose responsibility it is. Let's clear this matter up. This should not be hard, right? Meanwhile, because that's not being done, essentially, because I believe these laws are technically on the books, it's just that apparently it does not spell out who's supposed to enforce it and how clearly enough that it makes it easy for law enforcement and the AMA to kind of avoid responsibility for whatever various reasons. But the point is the laws are on the books. So we have not just the fact that individuals are having to suffer through, I mean, in some cases, you know, if you cannot sleep through the night, how are you going to wake the next morning? How are you going to function in your job? How are you going to see to your responsibilities, deal with customers, right? Not make mistakes and continue to earn your paycheck in a stable manner, not risk your financial future. If we want to bring up earning money and commercial activity, what about my job? But,
yes, exactly.
But I wanted to get to this point before another time. Well, this is law breaking that we essentially are kind of tolerating and normalizing. And then we want to say, but we need to do something about crime, but something that's very obvious. And it's not just this, it's the PH taxis, it's this, it is a lack of enforcement of rules. I think DOMA came out to say, look, they have people vending on Port of Spain on days they're not supposed to be out there selling. And when all these little things add up, and noise pollution is, I think, one of the ones that should be obvious to more people. It affects across the country, a wide cross-section of people. If the law is being broken and the police don't want to respond to this, to what extent should we have any faith that they'll respond to other things?
Well, the thing is, and CanPat has taken a completely different approach in 2025 because our members are deeply frustrated and increasingly disenchanted with the lack of meaningful progress on these issues, including persistent problems caused by the fireworks and the scratch bombs, all types of noise. So when you are, it has been where law enforcement is being abusive to our members. We are coming to you frustrated with help, needing help, and you are being abusive to our members. I have to mention that a key executive of our group's car was recently firebombed. So this is more than an attack on an individual. This is an attack on everyone who is standing up for their right to live peacefully and safely in their own communities. This is a violent criminal act aimed at silencing us. It underscores how serious and critical this fight is against noise pollution and how disruptive it has become. Our members and our leadership should not have to fear their safety or face intimidation simply because we are advocating for a basic human right, the right to live without constant fear and disruption. This incident has fueled our determination to press harder and demand stronger action from our authorities, not just on noise pollution, but also on holding these intimidation tactics. I mean, a doctor in my village, where I live, a main doctor who has selflessly served our community for years, especially the poor in our community, is now facing threats and had his home attacked simply because he's speaking out against a bar causing disruptive noise in the area. Violence? Come on. And for years now, the truth is, we have reached out in good faith to the EMA and law enforcement and have asked cooperation in addressing the relentless issue of this that is plaguing our community. We've been patient, we have been persistent and constructive in our approach, yet these agencies have remained frustratingly inactive, appearing almost indifferent to these issues. So the silence and the inaction from the EMA and law enforcement is not only disappointing, but it infuriates us now. Our community members, the vulnerable, the elderly, the children, are forced to endure constant disruption from bars, parties, a car passing. I mean, why are you infringing on my human right in my home, right? And everybody seems very dormant. We are calling on the Attorney General to not only intervene, but to use the full scope of his authority to address this issue decisively. He has the power to push for revised laws that impose heavier fines, punishments on those who continuously disregard regulations. The message has to be very, very clear. The time for leniency and loopholes is over. We need robust, enforceable laws that reflect the seriousness of the issue and provide real protection for our residents. We expect action in 2025. We have stood by and said we were going to cooperate with them, but we're not getting anything. So enough is enough. We are demanding it now. Action, meaningful change, starting immediately, Mr. Small. It's been tiring.
I do have a question because ironically there's an incident that happened in Tobago. It was a while ago, so I might not remember all the details, but now the area actually is very much a commercial area with loud music and multiple bars. But before that, someone tried to basically start that project, I guess you could say. And the residents around the area, they sued him, I believe. Yes. And they actually, the defendant mishandled the situation before it even reached to the final court ruling. So he kind of shot himself in the foot before it even got to trial, and he got his liquor license revoked, and his whole operation fell apart. So he kind of lost without I don't think the lawsuit had to go the distance. But the point is that a civil trial, I believe, was engaged. Would there be any facility for your organization to perhaps either provide advice or support or to lead the way on those matters on an individual basis? Because if the government isn't going to do it, I suspect the judges in our country will be more than happy to throw down rulings on matters like this if the matters get in front of them. But as you said, it's not so simple because intimidation tactics will probably potentially get worse depending on how things goes.
Right. So we have put out a call for lawyers to take cases that are, if they would offer their services, lawyers that this issue affects them, right? So they have offered, a couple of them have offered. A lot of people cannot afford this. I myself have taken up this as a civil matter some years ago, and I'll tell you, it reeked of corruption, the entire process. I lodged all my documents. I never received a call from the courts. The matter was brought up in front of and nobody informed the person. So when these things happen, and you have to take your time in our courts, and you are not even respected to show up, to get a call to show up. But my funny thing, the defendant, the bar owner was there. He got a call to show up. So you find these things happening. They sound crazy. They sound absolutely crazy, but they happen all the time, every day in our courts. So when these things happen and our members take up this type of fight and take it up as a civil matter in the court, and then these things happen to them, it's not called, somebody loses documents, it happens all the time. It's extremely frustrating. They don't have faith in the system. They don't have faith in us. I certainly don't. I am in the middle of litigation right now with a bar owner. I can't say too much about it because we're in the middle of it, but this has come from incidents in taken years. It's been incidents from the last 12 years. So it's going to take long to settle. But if I allow it to slip, what is going to happen again? If somebody's just going to take over a bar and do things again to upset the community, to affect the community, people do not speak out. And people don't speak out because crime is rampant. Intimidation tactics are being, we are allowing this to happen. Our authorities, we just sitting by and allowing this to happen. And what CanPAD wants to do is we need voices. I do not want, we do not want our members to stay silent. Now it's time for us to make some noise.
Well, I mean, maybe I gave too much respect to some of our lower court judges, or rather, because this isn't the first time I've heard things like this, maybe, you know, there's questions of the integrity of workers within the judiciary, the admin people, the clerks, etc., etc. Not always, but I've heard too many stories, right? Not that I have evidence to bring to bear, but I'll just say I've heard too many anecdotal stories of things like this happening. And it brings the question, I mean, we can't deal with the corruption, and it seems like there's no political will for that. And this is just one other area that corruption is affecting. And I guess people need to understand, yes, but if we're willing to let the laws be broken here, eventually they'll be broken elsewhere too. Intimidation tactics don't have to be just limited to cases like this, as you pointed out. So that leads me to, I guess you could say, maybe the final question, because we hope to have more conversation in the future. But for now, one of the things that I try to tell our viewer when he called in with his frustration is, in my opinion, I think as a society, we accept it too willingly. We think of certain noise pollution and the celebration with fireworks and fete music and bar music as part of the culture, and we tolerate it too easily. And we're complacent with regards to that. But then you also added up a whole other different dimension. Maybe we're also complacent because we don't want to be involved. We don't want to stick our neck out. We don't want to make the complaint. We don't want to lose our anonymity. What is it with regards to society? Is it both? Is it one more than the other? You know, am I correct in saying that as a society we do have this problem where we're too complacent, whether it's because of fear or because of, I guess people might not like it, but ignorance?
Well, I really think advocacy is not respected, even in our very families. When we speak out, you don't want to offend this one. You don't want us. People are talking about you. People are gossiping about you. We don't like to rock the boat. Okay, so also people dismiss us as the crazy cat ladies that always complaining, and you know, we actually have been on panels in Parliament, and we before the Joint Select Committee, and we were actually referred to people who are just saying, you know, people are just like as though we're sitting in our homes and we hear a noise and we flippantly just want to make a problem. They just dismiss how somebody with diabetes is affected, how blood pressure is affected, because we prefer to sit and suffer in silence out of fear for those things. How we go look, you know, and we need to stop. We cannot change anything from being silent. We will not be able to change anything. We say it is our culture. I love my country, or I would not be doing this, because we are fighting for a better world, for our children. When you hear stories of children having to go in a closet with their iPad because they're trying to study for SEA, right? Just this week, I had people on our WhatsApp chat. We just have like a WhatsApp chat group for support as well. There's nothing that myself and others can do to actually help. We're not part of the police. We don't work in the Attorney General's office. I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer, but we can provide an ear. But we need volunteers to speak up, because when they go to authorities, we're hearing no receipt books on the police. They roll their eyes. They're extremely rude. One police officer actually told me, "Ma'am, we don't have no vehicles now," which we hear all the time. best you get to your knees and pray to Jesus to help you because I cannot help you. Those were exact words from an officer of the law. And when you speak, and I don't want to speak out against police, but these are the things that my ears have heard. These are the things that people are hearing. We are not hearing anything, so it cannot be affecting you. That not loud? Why are you complaining? I could go on and on and on, and I know we're almost out of time, but it is just that, listen, do not shut us up because we're not going to be quiet. We're going to fight this noise with noise from our members in 2025.
I mean, things like intimidation tactics, we allow it here, it will spread elsewhere. Things like poor customer service from the police. I mean, this is not the first time I've heard of that as well. And for different issues to try to report different types of incidents. And I feel it kind of underscores, yes, it's nice for the executive to say that we're going to improve police relations with the public, but we need to actually see it consistently.
Where's the action? I've been hearing it for a long time. And what all we want, let me tell you how easy it is. It's simple. Empathy is all the public wants. Other than that, action. Please, when we go to report an issue, give us treat us like you are decent. Come on. Yeah, people.
With limited experience on customer service, I could tell you 50% of it is empathy. 50% of it is actually getting the work done, but 50% of it is how you communicate and showing empathy and concern and consideration for the issues.
We are already coming to you and we are sleepless. We are already coming to you and we are irritated. We are, and then, okay, when you tell me I cannot help you, what are you asking me as a citizen to do? Should I take the law into my own hands? Because that is the message that you are conveying to me. And when that happens, and it's in the front page of all our newspapers, then whose fault is it?
And I want to close. You've brought up something that I have not necessarily been an advocacy group, so I didn't know firsthand, but you brought up something that I find interesting. Advocacy is not respected in TNT. And I think that is unfortunately, beyond your group's own experience. I think that's widespread, true to form with regards to many different issues, because I always lament there seems to be so many things that there's a lack of an advocacy group, right? We tend to think lobby groups as a bad word, but not always. In the core sense of the word, their job is to appeal to the politicians. And true to what you're saying with regards to people not wanting to rock the boat, there's at times a lack of public outcry, and I am concerned, and I guess this goes back to what you said earlier, for the country. To some extent, if we just allow this to be the way it is, aren't we just going to be essentially steamrolled, run over by these issues because we are not willing to fight for ourselves? I guess at the end of the day, is that ultimately the message you want to leave to Trinidad? You could confirm or not that we need not to take matters into our own hands and maybe, utilize violence, but fight for our own rights and for our own selves. And as you said, fight in this case for the right to enjoy our property as the laws on the books already spell out how or what rights we should be able to do so under.
Yes, and you're actually devaluing our property value as well. So fight for your children. Fight for a better tomorrow. Let us just use our voices. Can't we do that? It seems like such a simple thing to me. But we need to speak up and put pressure on our leaders, because not enough pressure is being applied, because we are being forced into submission by the people we have entrusted to protect us.
And I will leave that there. That is a great way to end the discussion. And I think that is more universally true than any one of us would like to admit. But folks, that is Tamara Chatar, the PRO. I apologize if I got that wrong. PRO of Citizens Against Noise Pollution of Trinidad and Tobago. And we hope to have further conversations, as this situation is an ongoing one and it's an underestimated one. but I would not say it's an unimportant one. Thank you for joining me on Talking Point.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
You too. Stay safe. Be careful out there, even with your work, of course. Folks, Talking Point will be back. We will open up the phone lines and continue the conversation. Stay tuned. You could call in and have your say on this and other issues, things that I may not have mentioned before, but all of that after the break.
This holiday season, bring the magic of Christmas home with WESN's Joy of Christmas. Relive timeless classics from the laughter to the heartwarming moments that make the season unforgettable.
Hey, light the lamp, not the rat, light the lamp, not the rat!
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God!
Oh, blue baby.
Experience the joy of WESN special productions, crafted to bring you new stories and cherished memories. This year, let WESN bring the joy of Christmas to your home.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown!
Catch the spirit, catch the joy.
Anchors away. May the force be with you.
Only on WESN, your content capital.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
And we're back. This is Talking About WESN, the content capital. Of course, we open up the phone lines. And just a reminder, folks, if you get on air on the line, please do not try to have the conversation through the television. Mute the TV. Have the conversation through the telephone because there's a delay and it will be confusing if you try to pay attention to both. With that said, we have our first caller for the morning already. Digger Martin on the air. Good morning, caller. Welcome back to Talking Point, I should say.
Good morning. Diego Martin in the
Caller, good morning.
I say you heard me? I said Diego Martin in the house.
Yes. Welcome back.
Right.
Go ahead, caller.
The discussion you had with the young lady, you all didn't put up a telephone number to contact her because what she has said is really reality. I could remember when my daughter was doing Cape 2. She was disturbed and she had to change her sleep routine, and I had to invest in all sort of things to think because the neighborhood was noise every day. It so happened because of her own initiative and the way she decided to study late in the night and sleep during 3 to 5. She was successful in doing things. She has gone on to do a lot of good things now. But putting that aside, that is a good group. And if somehow you all could put up the numbers so people can interface and see how to get around noise pollution that is affecting the children with their studies. That is a critical thing. The second thing I'm hoping, and I don't know, I haven't seen it anywhere, where the Attorney General will be having his press conference to tell us what went on with the Auditor General and the Privy Council. I say it will be interesting. The last time he was basically having a press conference too, he had one on EMBD to clap back at Modena to think it. He had one with the local government election where he used a mathematical equation to show how good he was and how all the judges was on the government side, indicating that the Privy Council had only 3 law lords on his side and the government had 7 judges on their side. So I want to see how he explains this one now. More importantly, I am annoyed how the state is using scarce resources of taxpayers.
Yeah.
Now, for this decision to go forward for the Privy Council, who make it? I think that should have gone to Cabinet. Cabinet should have deliberated on it and then make a decision. It appears that the Minister of Finance, as soon as they lose in the local court of appeal, he said we're going and appeal it in the Privy Council. So I don't know if they deliberate. They should have deliberated because 3 heads better than 1. Because you had 3 senior council on the government side. You have Port of Spain South. You have the local government man.
Yeah.
And then you have the legal counsel for the cabinet, the AG. I mean to say, they should have come up with some idea that these things, like possibly like a snow cone and hell. So we would not have...
I'll have to ask you to end there because we have another caller waiting, but that's a good point. I'll respond to that later, but we have Arima on the line. Sorry if I've cut you off, Mr. Digger Martin, but Arima, good morning. Welcome to Talking Points. Good morning, caller. Did we lose Arima? Looks like we've lost Arima. All right, while we wait for other callers, Arima, feel free to call back. Sorry about that, but we got you just as Mr. Digger Martin started. But first of all, yes, that is something that I guess we need to understand. Noise pollution is not so simple because people have to pay money. I said one example, go into a hotel, and Mr. Digger Martin said he had to invest in things in order to help his daughter deal with noise pollution so she could study. We have Dabity on the line. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Blessed Friday to you, Sean. Wonderful program. It's nice to have the advocate for noise pollution. At the corporation, we have quite a lot of complaints coming in from bars and different places, and even cars. But the thing about it is that the law is out there, and I don't know if the EMA has the capacity, but they are primarily responsible for it, and from the officers at attend our meetings, they're doing a fairly good job. I want to just divert for 1 minute. There's an important issue going on. I'm surprised you didn't raise it. That's between the CJ and the Police Welfare Association concerning the officers not being able to carry firearm in the courts, and I think that is an issue has been going on for many years, and I really hope that good sense prevail. And from all understanding is that the law is being broken by the CJ in his so-called wishes or demand as being the head. So nice program as usual, and I really hope that we could get some more insight on this if you could have the CJ on your program. Thank you.
I mean, caller, I could invite him. I would be surprised if he accepts. But the situation, that's interesting, especially if you think that he is the one at fault. People in that position tend to not want to take interviews. That's just part of the course in TNT. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to compel them. And they get away with not speaking more often than not. We have, well, Mova, please call in. We also had Mova while Dabity was speaking. You could call in. The timing of the callers, I don't know. We're just unlucky with the fact that as one caller starts, another caller comes in. Mova, we have Mova back. Great. Mova, good morning to Talking Point. Welcome back.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning,
Kudos to Qatar. It's about time that group makes themselves noticeable on TV again. Sean,
yes.
I say something. I listened to the conversation, And Sean, you see, this is not something I would say when ASP Ali is there. But Sean, we who are fighting this noise, we have a lot against us, you know, Sean. I will tell you this, Sean, and I'm not telling you this from what anyone told me. Sean, most of these places, the bars especially, they create a noise nuisance. They have police protection, Sean. You know what I'm saying to you? Hello?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, sir. I have seen police vehicles parked up in front of certain bars and parked up for quite some time. And I've heard stories from other people. People were threatened after going to the police. So, Sean, it is a serious fight. And I will tell you something else, Sean. One of the reasons it has to be clear to the police service. This is why I have to restrain myself when I'm speaking to ASP Ali, because he has a part of the situation now when you are fighting for your rights. So it is really difficult and speaking to any one of these TTPS ambassadors, and they're just giving you this nonsense about, more than one person. They're insulting our intelligence, and I can't really blame them because they are being sent out there. But the hierarchy of the police service, and these people have no shame, Sean. They have no shame because everyone knows what is going on, and they choose to do nothing. Our prime television, live television, announcing the removal of the restrictions against COVID. The man said, loud music can now be played. What madness was that? And the media, up to today, has failed to ask him to explain that reckless statement.
All right, thank you, caller. I'm glad you brought up COVID because as you were talking, an example came up to mind where there might have been one or two cases that I know of, one that we may have witnessed firsthand, where there's a police station and across the road there's a bar and the bar's playing music and it's during COVID and there are officers at the bar during the day taking a drink at the bar during COVID. The thing with the media ambassadors, I think I would go out on a limb to say that I believe all of them would do the right thing. They're senior enough where if it's something to do with their own subordinates, their own station, their own unit, they might be able to do something about it, their own responsibilities. But they don't have the authority. They're not high enough to know they hear an issue and they could deal with it across the board in the TTPS. That's the problem. The media ambassadors, it's a very strange thing where we have these representatives who are to speak on an organization, but they're limited in what they could say and do in response to what they are told because they're not senior enough. Meanwhile, the ones who are senior, they tend to be very controlled with what they say and focus more on defending themselves than actually fixing problems. Now, the thing with police protection, I've heard the stories, and I'll just leave it at that. I've heard stories, and I don't have a good enough reason to dismiss those stories. So now, at the very least, they need to be considered by the public. You may not want to believe them. You may have heard similar stories. You may have experienced similar things that would suggest heavily that those stories are very true. And it goes back to what my conversation, the interview, the point was made by my guest. Intimidation tactics, corruption. These things are allowed to not just exist, but fester and grow. Because if you're getting away with it with noise pollution, then it won't be long before you may have a police officer that is covering a home invasion, or covering a kidnapping, or participating in a kidnapping. Or wait, we've gone to that extreme where police officers, according to witnesses, participated, didn't just cover up a kidnapping. This is how far it can go. Not saying all officers will go this far, but let's just be real. The possibility now exists. We have seen officers lie to their superiors after being the ones who accidentally shot their own colleague, and he died because, I mean, to some extent, they were so inept that they shot him in the back of his neck. The key point is not just that they were inept at utilizing a firearm when opening fire, and it hasn't been proven. One of the things with PC Gilt's death is we have not necessarily gotten our justifiable reasons for the police to utilize their firearms in the first place. They claim that the suspect was armed and was potentially threatening them, right? Except they lied about the suspect shooting PC Gilt's. So can't we suspect that they lied about the suspect being a threat to them in the first place? Meanwhile, that point, they lied to their superiors about such a serious incident. When things like this happen, when suspects could die in custody of the police or the prisons, when they could go to that extreme, why should we give them the benefit of? Of course, they're not going to be involved in low-level corruption. They're only involved in high-level corruption. That's not an argument. We know they could go further and beyond just covering up noise pollution done by bars, just protecting their friends or their favorite watering hole. So should we not think this as being possible and more widespread than we would like to admit? And more importantly, because it came out, right? The response of the police at times. You better pray to Jesus because that's the only help you're gonna get. That was the line, something like that. And I felt that attitude in police stations. Again, you're supposed to be able to go to any police station to report whatever, right? And I felt that attitude. Firsthand, I've seen it in some cases. It's ridiculous. It seems as though too much of the rank and file, whether it's the police, the AMA, or whichever government institution, doesn't actually want to do their job. Now, to some extent, I get it. The public can be abusive to customer service representatives. That's the flip side to this. I know. It's a vicious cycle. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first? A bad public interaction because the public was being entitled and belligerent, or a bad public interaction because the officer or the clerk or the CSR was being disrespectful? I don't know. But the thing about it, when you look at it from a societal perspective, the answer is probably both. Regardless, that's not an excuse. We need the professionals to still be professionals despite whatever goes on, because they can't prejudge each member of the public that comes before them and think, oh, well, it's just another member of the public and I don't want to deal with them, so I will treat them however I want to treat them. We have Sanford on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
I want to address something that Mova said, and this is a problem that I think is sometimes perpetuated by yourself. Let me get to it. He talked about there's something that he would say he would never say to ASP Ali.
Yeah.
And this is part of our problem. And I think sometimes we fall into that trap. When these media ambassadors, they send them they send them out, and they are very amenable. They have their personality. They choose people to send out there to represent the police service. And we, as the public, because of our nature, we tend to have this sort of relationship with these people and we like them, and therefore we don't want to say things to them. They are the bridge between us and the police service, and the police service provide. And I think this tiny population, when we say what you have to say to these media ambassadors, whether it is not about them solving anything, it is getting the message out and letting them know and letting them take back the information to the police service hierarchy and let them deal with it. So this thing about We don't want to say these things to ASPRE or the other ones that are out there, Pitt and Greenwich, very nice people, but they demeanor. But say it to them. Let them take the message out. Let them take the message back. Sorry. How about you, Sean?
Thank you, Mr. San Fernando. Ironically, I think Mova may have actually misspoke, because I do believe he did bring it up with ASPLE. And he even himself, when he called in earlier, basically expressed his disagreement with what ASPLE said in that situation, if my memory serves correct. Because ASPLE would say, well, look, we need the reports. What happens is people don't kind of follow through with the reports. Now, to some extent, that might be true, because Tamara did point out, from Citizens Against Noise Pollution, she did point out that there are people who don't want to be involved, they don't want to make reports. So to some extent, that might be true. Is it that ASPLE's experience is limited? Is it that he is having to be politically correct because he cannot outwardly criticize TTPS? Because they might be the bridge for us, and I appreciate what the media ambassadors do, because I do believe they do a good job. The problem is on where it's being undermined is the fact that they're not the executive, and the executive is not doing a good job. And I believe, while to us they might be a bridge, to the executive there might be insulation. There might be a way to keep them away from all of this. Now, you're right. Regardless, we should always bring it up. Don't have to bring it up in a disrespectful way to attack the individual, but we should still bring it up regardless. And if they have to go through the motions and give us the politically correct answer and avoid the issue, then that's fine. That should all be on the record. And we should understand that to some extent, them avoiding the issue is what essentially they have to do. The executive, though, ultimately, we need it to be voiced publicly, right? So at least we could say, listen, don't say we didn't say it. Don't say we didn't tell you. And it's not our fault if you want to treat the Media Ambassador program as a way to avoid accountability and communication with the executive. Because I do believe that the program itself, while the core functions exist, I think the way how it's being managed by the current executive has undermined it. And communication was a lot better under McDonald Jacobs and Gary Griffith, in part because they participated in the communication proactively. And they did a better job championing the police customer service or police interaction with the public. And I feel as though the current executive, they are so overwhelmed and they lack enough proficiency. And I'll use an analogy of I said this yesterday on Face of Sports. It's like when you just don't have the talent around you in American football, you are liable to get more injured. And in this case, it's not that you're liable to get more injured physically, but you're liable to put yourself in more hot water because you can't deal with these situations. And the media ambassadors themselves, the part of the problem is they could hear what you have to say, but I suspect their ability to be advocates within the entity of the TTPS is limited, because it seems as though the executive, they're like politicians. They're just going to do what they want. Sorry, we have Mova on the line again. I don't know if he's still with us. I didn't notice the update. Mova, are you still there? Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, Sean. I had to call back. First of all, Sean, I just want to say to San Fernando, I understand what you just said, but I don't think you understand why I said what I said. Because, Sean, I think you are aware of the fact that when ASPLE was there some time ago, I came across kind of rough to him, and I realized that it got a certain way, so I had to back off because I could be very passionate, and I am really, really, really serious about this fight, you know. But Sean, let me tell you this, and let me tell Mr. San Fernando this. I called in on another channel, on one of the most popular ones, some time ago. And I went into the office and I told him, I said, listen, you all don't really understand how we're suffering. And I went on to tell him how long that I am fighting this fight. And I told them how long I'm wrong, and that I know that the law is there, that they never enforce it. And the person who answers the call cut in and told me that I was being disrespectful. I was shocked. I said, but you know, so this is why I try to be very You know, I try to be diplomatic because I have a lot of things I could tell these officers and embarrass them because I know a lot about this fight. I've been on it. And Sean, in closing, let me just tell you, would you believe that the EMA came into existence in 1995, Sean? We are in 2024, and the EMA has up to now failed to deal with noise pollution. I rest my case.
Paula, like, I think I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you, but here's the thing, and maybe even the host, I don't know what was said, so I don't want to assume final judgment, but there's a possibility that sometimes people interpret passion and being upset as you're upset with them, whereas you could just be upset at the situation and you're passionately speaking about it. I think Mr. Sanfanel's point, let's not lose the key thing that he said, that we have to be willing to speak out, and we have to be willing. The media ambassadors, it's a public forum, so it should be utilized by the public to get the message out. I understand where you're coming from, though. I don't want the media ambassadors to be disrespected because, listen, if it was the commissioner, well, then there's no excuse. You're in charge, you're the top, and if people are vexed with you because they think you're not doing your job, it is what it is. The media ambassadors don't have responsibility over the police service, so I would say try to be more respectful. I mean, even with the commissioner, technically be more respectful, but if you want to blame them, blame the commissioner, because you think they're not doing a job and you have a reasonable argument to make, fine. Media ambassadors is, it's not so direct. So it's a fine line. And I get it. You don't necessarily want to anger the media ambassadors, and Ashraf has done this. He does not shy away from the hard topics. He might not be able to answer or respond in a way that will be satisfactory to all involved because he is merely a media ambassador. And he is not a commissioner, deputy commissioner, or assistant commissioner of police. He's not in charge of a division, so he can't even speak to his division. But the media ambassadors are professional enough to deal with that situation. You should still be willing to speak to them with your issues, have your passion, just know where it's appropriate to direct that passion and your aggravation too. Don't necessarily direct it to the media ambassadors. Of course, if there's a media ambassador that gives you a really bad answer that upsets you, then that's a whole different story, right? I'll just leave that there. But so I understand where both of y'all are coming from, and I think both of y'all have good perspectives. And there are things that we should take away from both of those perspectives. Yes, don't just be antagonistic to the media ambassadors, but utilize the public forum, because I guess one of the things that we in TNT don't understand, it's not always enough to talk about an issue once or twice or 10 times. Sometimes to get things done, it has to be over and over and over and unrelenting, and essentially with no end in sight. You have to be willing to run that marathon, to advocate whatever it is you want to advocate for. This is just part of the culture that perhaps we need a little bit of an upgrade on because we're not used to it. But unfortunately, in modern society, it is what it is. Now, with that said, I want to switch gears again and remind everybody that today is Friday. And on WSN, every Friday, we have Andre Batiste, the face of sports. And he presents you Fun Friday. And this Friday, the Prime Minister Stakes, 2,000 meters. Of course, we see Fitzgerald Hines and Robert Lahan, they've been X'd off. They're no longer in the race, according to the Face of Sports host, Andre Batiste. Horse racing expert extraordinaire. These are the jockeys for the Prime Minister Stakes, 2,000 meters. Tune in today, this afternoon, 2:30 p.m., the Face of Sports, to see which of these P&M jockeys will come out victorious. And maybe it might show us who the next Prime Minister is. Maybe not. Of course, the results of this race will not be an official prediction by political experts of WSN. Let me just make that disclaimer right there, right? But let's have a little joy in our lives. Not saying that we need to make a joke out of everything, but to some extent, sometimes the irony and the foolishness, you can't help but laugh because you'll be crying too much. If you take everything to heart, you need to be able to, every now and then, not make light of the situation, but have a little chuckle, relieve the stress and the tension in your own soul just a little bit, before you. But don't forget that then afterwards we have to go right back into the work. And I'll close the show with that. Advocacy, as Tamara said, it's not something that's done in TNT. It seems to be something that's not very respected, not very well understood, not very appreciated in TNT. I don't know why, but maybe that's why we don't have marches over crime. Maybe that's why the candlelight movement, at the end of the day, it hasn't been able to spring back up. And I think that's a shame. I think that's a shame. We need to be willing to speak out about issues more consistently, more frequently, and more persistently, because as with this noise pollution thing, this situation is merely but a symptom to a wider problem with regards to corruption, ineptitude, and laziness. Why do I need to deal with it? We raise the price of gas, they ain't riot yet. We are seen as less corrupt. Why do we have to deal with it? And ditto for the other side as well. They don't have the political will because they don't want to put the energy and the effort in. Think about it. If they don't even want to be the MP for the area of the people that voted them in, you're responsible for putting them in parliament, and they don't show up for you. They're gonna show up for you on an issue that nobody apparently wants to deal with. And it's not just noise pollution. The things that goes on in noise pollution happens across the board and other issues. So if you think this is not my issue, I have a different issue. Believe you me, the system is broken. The system that facilitates all that's going on with noise pollution is broken, and it facilitates law breaking and corruption in other areas of society. And we need to be more involved. You don't have to be more involved with noise pollution. You can advocate for something else. And I will bet my last dollar that all of the issues will converge and meet at a nexus point with regards to corruption and poor performance in our law enforcement and our governance. A lot of these issues will converge. That's why if you have a different issue, fine. But don't just pay that issue lip service. Get involved and be more involved in the governance of your country. Don't wait for the election. Folks, make today and this weekend a good one, as Mr. Shaw would always say, and remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. A political party ain't gonna remember you when you're gone, but your friends, your family, the people who you meet day to day, who you help, that's who will remember you. That's who will always have your back. Remember that. And hopefully, stay safe. We will see each other next week. Bye-bye.
WESN.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media